designing an experiential course with real-world client collaboration. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Abigail Blakely, and I'm the Senior Manager of Content Marketing here at Stukent. I'm so excited to be hosting this webinar with you today. Before we dive in, let's get familiar with the chat feature. It's on the right side of your screen. Everybody go ahead and say hi. Let us know where you're coming from, what university you're with. We'd love to hear from you. We also want to make sure that today's session is interactive. So if you have any questions or comments throughout the presentation, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We can address them at the end of the conversation, or if you have something that maybe can be addressed in the comments, we do have someone here to help with that. So I'll go ahead and see who we have joining. Hi, Anne Michelle. She's going to be joining us later as a presenter. Paulo from Colorado, Puerto Rico, Eastern Illinois University. Thanks everybody for joining us. It's going to be so much fun. All right, before we get started, we just have a few little announcements that we want to make. So first thing, we have some more webinars that we're hosting this semester. Upcoming, we have Back to School, Engaging Students from Day One, Mastering the Virtual Classroom, Best Practices for Online Teaching, and Gen AI Essentials, a 3-part guide to teaching for an AI future. So be sure to click the link at the bottom of your screen to learn more and register for any of our upcoming events. We also have a library where you can watch any of our past events on demand too. Next, we have, as a special gift for everyone attending today, we want to offer you free instructor access to any of our courseware and Simternship. These bundles are a comprehensive package featuring hundreds of instructor and student resources, including groundbreaking simulations, continuously updated courseware, and a wealth of engaging assignments and auto-graded quizzes. Everything is designed to seamlessly integrate theory with real-world experience and equip students with the skills and confidence needed for success. So go ahead and click on the link below to request your free instructor access. I also wanted to share a little quick snapshot of the quiz that we sent out. If you didn't take it, it was, what kind of experiential educator are you? If you did take it, let us know in the chat which one you got. So the most common result was the career connector, while the least common was the capstone creator. So no matter which result you landed on, career connector, capstone creator, collaboration champ, or project pioneer, today's session is designed to help you take your unique teaching style and elevate it even further. So let's go ahead and get into the presentation. First, I want to introduce and welcome our speaker, Wahiba Chair, to the stage. Wahiba Chair is an award-winning educator and strategist with over 15 years of experience in higher education, technology, marketing, and communications. Since 2014, she has empowered thousands of students and professionals at top Canadian universities, including University Canada West, Simon Fraser University, and the University of British Columbia, to advance their careers through industry-focused teaching. In 2024, Wahiba was actually honored with the prestigious Excellence in Teaching and Learning Award at the University Canada West for her exceptional contributions to student success. With a focus on empathy, community building, and educational technologies, Wahiba is passionate about designing experiential, human-centered, and engaging learning experiences. So I will go ahead and hop off stage and let you do your thing.
Thank you so much, Abigail, for the introduction. And thank you so much to Stukent for having me. It's great to see all of you in the chat. Thank you for introducing yourselves. As Abigail mentioned, please feel free to let us know what kind of experiential educator you are if you've had a chance to take the quiz. Mine was the project pioneer, so I'm curious to see if there's a few others who had the same one. Meanwhile, I'm just going to put up my slides quickly. Perfect. I don't know what kind of weather you have where you are, but it's kind of sunny where I am in Vancouver. So hopefully your weekend is starting off right. And thank you again so much for joining us. I know you probably have better things to do on a summer Friday. And so for the longest time, my kids have been asking me to set up what they call a pretend store for real life. And so being an overthinker myself, I could have spent hours researching the perfect setup on Google, Pinterest, and ChatGPT. But this time I decided to just try to follow the Nike concept and just do it when we were going camping, which was also going to be for the first time. But you see, the marketer in me just couldn't help it but teach my kids about the 4 Ps in the process. So first, I asked them what they wanted to sell. My son loves blueberry muffins, so we made a big batch, added some juice and poppers, which is this candy that pops in your mouth. And I'm not sure if you've ever tried it, that kids really love it. We tried to keep pricing simple at 2 treats for $1. Since they were targeting family, we were looking for parks and playgrounds near our campsite. And promotional tactics consisted of cute smiles and verbal callouts. Now, after all that excitement wore off, there was frustration, boredom, and lots of it. We soon realized it wasn't that easy to convert all these cute smiles into money in their piggy bank. I remember my son saying, "Mama, this is super hard. Can I just get some lemonade?" Which, by the way, we did. But ultimately, we encouraged them and they persisted. And they found their sweet spot in a large park near our campsite, where they were able to attract not only their initial target audience, being families, but also tourists. In fact, their biggest customer was a group of Chinese tourists who loved the muffins so much, bought a whole box of them. The look on my kids' faces when they sold their first big batch of blueberry muffins was pure magic. And it reminded me that we all value experiential learning at any age, especially when we get to apply our skills to a real life setting and build meaningful connections. As we know, higher ed is no exception. In fact, over 80% of students would like to see more real company-led projects, but only X percentage of schools currently offer them. There should be a poll coming up in the chat shortly. Feel free to take a guess. I'll give you 30 seconds. Let's see. The top answer so far is 20% at 44%. I'll give you guys a few more seconds. We've got 18 answers so far. Oh, still at 20%, but it's close, between 20 and 30. 19 answers. Maybe we'll wait for a couple more. "21 answers. Still, top answer is 20%. 54% of audience. Let's wait a few more seconds. Okay, so it seems like 20% is your answer, at least from 43% of you. And actually, it's 30%. So you were pretty close. So good guesses, everybody. Thank you so much for participating. Ultimately, what this means is that we have a huge gap. This gap presents a huge opportunity for institutions to offer more project-led courses that can benefit them, their students, and the community at large. And so today, I'm very excited to be sharing with you what I've learned the past 2 years, designing, launching, and refining a major communications capstone course. To help us walk through the case study, I'm going to use a simplified version of the Ivy course development model that you may be familiar with. As Abigail mentioned earlier, if you have any questions or thoughts as I go through the presentation, feel free to share them in the chat. I'll try to check in with you at different times, but otherwise we will get to them at the end of the webinar. And so the first step, which is research and analysis, can also easily become a rabbit hole. So I find it's important to really focus on some key pillars, starting with the situation, being why do we need this course in the first place? And how does it fit with our existing courses and programs? And then the second part of this, which I think is the most important part of the research and analysis, is really understanding our learners, not just demographically who they are, but really psychographically, what their interests are, what their barriers are to not just learning, but also to getting a job and building their careers. And ultimately, no course design is with unlimited time and budget. So it's really essential to look at our resources and see what we have at hand so we can leverage it as much as we can. Now, when it comes to research, I find we often tend to rely on secondary research because, let's face it, it's readily available, it's more affordable. So things like labeled market data, consulting with other educators, with industry, talking to students and alumni is very important, even informally. And then it's important to see what else is out there. Things like, what other institutions are doing, because that way we can position our course more uniquely. For us, the situation was pretty simple. We knew anecdotally that our students, being mostly international, face tougher job prospects than their domestic peers. And sometimes you can find nuggets like these informally, which really help you understand the pain points and struggles of your audience. Ultimately, you can come up with something like this, which is an audience or learner analysis that includes, again, the demographics, but also the psychographics. For us, we knew that our students' barriers to getting a job was mostly lack of experience and Canadian work experience and network. And some of their challenges included really the financial pressure they were dealing with, the academic pressure, and of course, a lot of the mental health pressure and challenges that all students go through. So ultimately, we wanted this course to act as a bridge, helping to propel students from school to the workplace. Now, once we get through this step of research and analysis, it's really our guide for the second step, which is the design and development, which is guided by the vision of the course. We wanted to make sure that everything we did in this step, whether it's learning outcomes or assessments or activities, was supporting students' job-ready skills, their portfolio, their personal brand, and ultimately their personal network. And so when it came to learning outcomes, we saw what the employers were looking for, looked at labor market data, and we wanted to keep it simple around 4 key themes, starting with leadership and collaboration, and then advanced business communication skills, consulting skills, and then, of course, real-life applications. Now, when it came to the material, of course, we wanted it to be experiential, but we also wanted it to be accessible. What does this mean? We knew that our students, being mostly international, faced their financial situation. They couldn't afford to buy a textbook for over $100. And there was no textbook we could find for a capstone course of this sort. So we wanted it to be accessible, allow for flexible delivery so that we could use it in online, hybrid, and so on. And ultimately, we just didn't want to overwhelm them in this information age. So we ended up using lots of different OERs. We used case studies from the PRSA, relied on in-class activities, and we supplemented it with guest speakers who brought that beyond the classroom stories and expertise. One thing that I really wanted to have in the course was a communication template that students can work on throughout the course collaboratively. And to my surprise, after going down the rabbit hole of researching this, I couldn't find anything suitable until I came across something from the Health Foundation. Then again, when I looked at the fine print, their copyright didn't allow me to modify it. And I really wanted to make this resource more custom to the course. And so with the encouragement of our librarian, I ended up creating this resource, which has been instrumental throughout the course. And so bottom line here, if you can't find what you're looking for, you can create it, consider converting it into an OER, which is what I did, by the way, for this resource that I'll be sharing with you also at the end of the webinar. Now, I know I covered a lot already, but so I wanted to check in with you to see if you had any quick thoughts or questions before I move to the meat of the presentation, which is more about projects. Any quick thoughts or questions? All right, so let me continue. And then if you have anything else that comes up, I'll try to take another quick pause after. And so I also ended up creating a lot of bite-sized content that other instructors could use because, again, there was no slides that we could provide for this course. Now, when it came to projects, which is the big part of this course, we wanted to work with relevant projects with purpose in mind. What does this mean? We wanted to work with clients who truly valued empathy and mentorship, clients we could have a quick and easy onboarding with, and we didn't have to sign 5 different NDAs to share information with. We needed to make sure the deliverables were aligned with the course assessments and deliverables. And ultimately, we wanted these projects to have some meaning for the students, for them to feel like they were making a difference. And so we ended up working with 2 different types of projects. The first one is internal/university projects because, of course, it checked all the boxes. But also, if you probably know, like most departments in the university could benefit from a communication strategy, be it internal or external. And then the second type of project we work with was the nonprofit sector because it can offer a low entry point for international students and new immigrants. And now that we decided what kind of clients and projects we wanted to work with, you're probably thinking, great, so how do I find these clients? Which I understand is your biggest pain point when it comes to incorporating client collaboration, according to the quiz you've taken. So I feel like this part could warrant its own webinar, and I'm definitely not an expert in it, but I'll share with you what I've learned so far. It's really like any other lead generation process, except it has to be fairly curated and personalized. So what I did at the beginning is I thought about some initial potential clients based on the types of clients I mentioned earlier through my university network, my professional network. And then I ended up emailing them like a simple email pitch that I customized to the potential client, outlining the scope, the expectation, the benefits to them. Later on, I started including things like deliverables so they could see what our communications plan could look like, testimonials to obviously incorporate ethos in my email. And my call to action after that email was a conversation because I really felt like I needed to go through this and make it a more human process. And I wanted to have that opportunity for them to ask questions. And so typically would have what we call a partnership discussion, where which I try to keep at 30 minutes to be mindful of their time. I had 10 minutes of presentation that I went through to go through the kind of students we have, the project ideas, the collaboration model, and then I gave them a chance to share their ideas. Sometimes clients had 2 different projects they wanted to share with me and say, which one should we do? Which one do you think would work best? And ultimately, they would ask questions. After that meeting, I would typically give them a deadline to fill up the project brief, which would act as the project confirmation or the handshake. Now that we know what the pain points are from the instructor perspective, can you take a guess at what the pain point is or the biggest barrier from the potential client perspective? So there should be a poll coming up in your chat box fairly quickly. Feel free to pick your guesses. So it looks like the number one, the guesses are more around unclear value outcomes, very valid point. Number 2, the runner-up is limited time or limited budget or resources. And again, there's different studies that have been made around this topic. I'm referencing one specifically, but hopefully you try not to take a look at Google or ChatGPT when answering this. I really want to know your candid, quick guesses. Okay, I'll give you another few seconds. I think last time we had 22 answers, almost there. All right, it looks like 20. Okay, so the top answer you provided is limited. Oh, actually it changed, an unclear value or outcome, which is a great guess. But actually, for this particular study, this may surprise you. The number one barrier was actually lack of time. Oh, my previous slide. There you go. Lack of time. So there's other studies. These are all pain points that are experienced by potential clients. But the number one barrier, according to this particular study, was actually lack of time for busy employers. And if we look back at the poll you did in the quiz you took on before registering, let me just find it quickly. Couple slides down, the number two reason, 35% of you said it was managing logistics and time. So it sounds like time is obviously a big barrier to both instructors and potential clients. And so we needed to design a collaboration model that was both efficient and effective. We also wanted to make sure it was structured and combined synchronous and asynchronous communication. So the collaboration model has been working for us, is what I'm showing on the slide. Basically, before the term starts, as mentioned, the client would fill up what we call a client brief, a project client brief, where they would include all the information about the project, supply all additional material. I would send that off to the students before the term starts, and then students would use this to get started, do their research, and whatever they could not find the answer to, whether in the brief or by researching independently, would be addressed in the progress presentation, in the check-in meeting in week 2. And then they would use that information to work through that progress presentation in week 6. They present their findings to an industry panel and the client and the instructor, use the feedback from there to refine their presentations to the final one in week 10, again to an industry panel and the client as well. And then they will use all that feedback from the instructor, their peers, the client, and the industry panel to finalize their plans into a final handoff that they share with the client, and can also serve as their portfolio. So I'd like to take another quick pause here because I know this slide has a lot of information. So if you have any quick questions or thoughts that come to mind, feel free to share them in the chat. All right, so we'll keep going then. Now we're on to, probably you guessing, step 3 of this process, which is the funnest part, I think. This is where you put your course out there and see what happens. It's much more fun than doing, the research analysis, in my opinion. We first launched this course in summer of 2024 when we only had 3 students. And as you can see in the slide, the interest in the course has grown ever since. We've also used each iteration as an opportunity to refine it. The delivery model that has been working for us in this course has been a hybrid delivery model, meaning that for 2 hours a week, students will meet with me. We cover mini lectures, case studies, activities, and then for 2 hours, they have what we call OGL, online guided learning time, where they would meet by themselves on Teams to work on their communications template and then share with me a structured report. And of course, if they have any questions while meeting, they could also message me on Teams as I'll also be live there. In summer of 2024, we partnered with Student Affairs and Services on a project to increase the engagement, the usage and awareness of the GuardMe Student Support Program. As you probably know, students' mental health has been on the decline since the pandemic, and this is especially true for international students. So students found this project to be very meaningful to them and came up with lots of realistic but creative ideas. I'll give you a minute to read the slide. In the fall of 2024, we partnered with the library on a similar project, and I'm going to let Liz, our undergraduate librarian, tell you more.
I worked with students from work for 90 on a library and learning commons project. So that was with the goal of really just making it clear that both the library and the learning commons work together. We're one department and we have an interconnected set of support services. My experience working with the students was so great. It really was such an enjoyable time, the whole thing. It was kind of in the evenings, which is not usually my work time, but I found myself really looking forward to spending time with the students and joining the class. Did the deliverable meet my expectations? Absolutely. Well and truly exceeded them as well. Um, they produced really polished work. They gave practical ideas that we could implement almost immediately, so really tangible solutions, but then also thought in like a bigger future planning perspective and gave some more substantial suggestions for kind of that long-term perspective as well, which was super helpful. And we have already started to implement some of these recommendations. We're doing a lot of the displays, and I think it's already starting to work. We're getting a bigger emphasis on the library and the learning commons together, and I think that's translating for our students, which is great.
In the winter of 2025, earlier this year was the first time we collaborated with an external organization. It was a nonprofit that we knew through our alumni network. We worked on 3 different projects. One of them was a Giving Tuesday campaign, and one of them was a broader communication strategy. And this past spring, we worked with another nonprofit and also the Vancouver chapter of the CPRS, the Canadian Public Relations Society, which is the equivalent of the PRSA. Again, as part of the course journey, students are encouraged to share their stories and their journey on LinkedIn using the course hashtag. As you can see, they use it as an opportunity to build content around their brand and develop industry relationships. This is also part of a graded course activity to incentivize them further. Now, when it comes to evaluation, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Barcelona principles in public relations, but I'm a big believer in holistic evaluation and looking at so many different data points. Things like student evaluations can be helpful, but I find that students fill them up quickly, and they often don't include a lot of qualitative feedback that you could use to make changes. And so things like focus groups can be helpful, but the one thing that has been the most helpful for me in this course is the reflection report, which is on the last assignment of the course where students are prompted to share more about their experience in the course, things that they have enjoyed, but also things that they were challenging to them or things they would have liked to learn more of. When it comes to AI, LinkedIn activity, guest speakers, case studies, you name it. And so this is something I would strongly recommend to incorporate in any of your client collaboration courses. And to bring this to life, I'm going to share with you some quick, candid reflections from my students.
I think for me, the course itself, I was really, really excited about the project. I was super excited. Having a course like this, design where we were actually dealing with a real life project that was it may be implemented, and some of the aspects of it will certainly be appreciated, somewhere. That was good to actually see things come together, and especially if you never had the experience before to do anything like that.
Work for 90. What I didn't really like is go back to work with a real life scenario, because in most of the other courses along UCW, we work with case studies. When we're working with a real organization that has real problems and we cannot just solve it hypothetically with like go all in with social media, but it's like, no, we don't have money for social media. Well, where are you come up with? So I think that's one of it, like a great opportunity just for us to get like a dip in the water of what the industry is like, because they're not going to be case studies where we have a lot of budget or what everything's perfect. We're going to have to deal with so many like restraints, and they're going to be barriers for us.
as a capstone course. I didn't learn anything specific I hadn't learned in previous courses, but it helped me to put everything I learned in a unique perspective, pushed me to sharpen my mind and create a valuable product that would benefit this company. It was the closest experience to a real life professional setting and helping me settle a lot of prior knowledge in my mind. Presentation skills, research skills, creativity, writing skills, and the skill of listening to the struggles and expectations of an actual client. Everything was at stake when creating that project in this course.
The biggest challenge in this course from an instructor and I think also student and client perspective is the pace. We have 4 terms a year, which means that our terms are typically shorter than other universities. And so if a student, for example, misses the first class, it can really set them back and they'll need a lot of extra support. The second challenge I found teaching this course a few times is the expectations and the baselines that students come with. Every student is supposed to have foundational knowledge of communication strategy, but everybody is different. And so what I do, the way I've been addressing this challenge is by assessing students informally at the beginning of the class to see how much past knowledge of communication strategy they have, looking at their past work. And then also at each class, I give students options. So I'll say, this is a rough plan of what we're going to cover today. And I have some students like Christian who feel like, I already know everything. I just want to sit with my group, use this precious class time to work on our communications plan. So they do that. And then I have other students who feel like, I would really like to get a deeper dive into a particular topic like messaging or evaluation. So I will work with them directly. And so this approach obviously needs a lot of juggling from the instructor side, but I really find helps to improve student engagement and the quality of the output. And so instead of sharing with you another recap slide, I thought I would ask you, as you're processing a lot of information that I know I shared, what is your takeaway? What is something that stood out for you? If you're thinking of incorporating client collaboration into new or existing courses. Or if you have any questions, feel free to also let us know in the chat. So instead, I'd like to leave you with 3 things today. The first one is the strategic communications plan, as promised, that you can adapt to your course, being communications or other. I also have a sample client brief that you could use to set up client collaboration in your course. And of course, I had to share with you the recipe to what my kids think is the best lemon blueberry muffin recipe that I did not create. You can find all these resources on the link in the slide. Thank you so much for being such an engaged audience today and for letting me have a bit of time on your summer Friday. I look forward to connecting with you. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and answering some of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wahiba, for this amazing presentation. Would you be able to post the link to that QR code again in the chat?
Sure, no problem. Yes.
And we'll be sure to send that in a follow-up email for everyone who attended as well with the slides.
Sure. I'm just typing it right now. Was there any questions, Abigail?
I didn't see any questions in the chat. I think you did just a really amazing job presenting.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Yes, of course. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Now we are going to hear from Anne Michelle, the Director of Instructional Design at Stukent, on experiential learning. So Anne Michelle, you can go ahead and hop on stage, and I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Abby. I'm going to remind myself how to share my screen. Okay. Everyone see my screen now? I need to find my way back to, there we are. Okay. So what I'm going to share with you today is Stukent's E3 learning experience. And what I want to do is really show you how what Wahiba just shared fits perfectly into the context of our learning experience and our instructional model. So above all else, what we're trying to accomplish with our learning experience is to close the theory practice gap. So the theory practice gap, as you can see here, is that disconnect between academic learning and real world application. So it's that bridge that students are challenged to cross when they leave the classroom where they've been embroiled in theoretical knowledge and they now have to go into the workplace. And there's, as we all know, a world of difference in how something gets executed in a real world with real world constraints and what the ideal vision of it looks like in the classroom. So we want to help students more seamlessly cross that bridge. So what we've developed is the E3 learning experience. So the E3 learning experience is intended to engage students at the start of a curriculum with career relevant learning, really establishing that relevance from the moment they get started. How does this information impact your future career? How does it impact your future earning potential? How is it connected to what you want to do and what you dream of? We then enrich that core instruction with just-in-time work integrated experiences that connect knowledge to skills. And it's at this stage where what Wahiba shared is really going to come into play. In the classroom and what we do with our courseware and Simternships, we then encode that knowledge. So they've enriched it through experiential practice, and they're now going to use formative and summative learning to make sure that that conceptual practice that they've gone through turns into real world expertise. At every stage, we support this by Stukent's pillars of virtual work integrated learning. I'll share that in a moment. We ensure they have scaffolding and support at every point. And we acknowledge that we are aiming for not just academic success, but to see each student in the job that they dream of. So I'm not going to dig deeply into these. I'll share a white paper link at the end where you can get more information on this if you're interested in it. But I just wanted to show the background of this learning experience, which is grounded in a combination of scholarly learning theories. So we, of course, have constructivism, which is really the counter to the old model of learning, which was about rote memorization. And this is more about the idea that students need to go through experiences to construct knowledge themselves. It can't just be handed over to them. And experiential learning makes that more active, that they actually have to experience. They have to find the relevance that Wahiba was talking about. Work integrated learning is not new. This goes way back to apprenticeship models, of course, traditional internship and co-op models, but it's the idea that when we can have students do actual workplace application of these theories and make curricular connections, that is going to support their mastery of skills and concepts. And we've combined that with simulation learning, which again is older than you might think, because simulation-based learning has a long history in both medical and aviation fields, where, as you can imagine, it's pretty important to have a low-stakes environment to make mistakes. You certainly don't want to discover that your physician has been learning something and then hear, oops. So we like to keep the oopses to a low-stake environment. So this is all at the foundation of the E3 learning experience. And you can see to the right of the slide what we have defined as our Stukent pillars of virtual work integrated learning. So what these try to support is ensuring that at every stage, learning is supported by building a comprehensive knowledge and skill base, allowing for the just-in-time experiential application of those knowledge and skills. So really eliminating that space and time between when they get to practice this, not waiting until they have a summer internship, not waiting until they're in the job, but really letting them apply it as soon as they learn it. And that should include deliberate, practiced, formative learning activities where they have the freedom to fail, learn from that failure with minimal consequences, and learn the importance of feedback. I know that has been a concern with a lot of instructors with Gen Z, is that, you know, it's kind of the gold star generation. They only want the pat on the back. And what we can really teach them through strong formative learning activities is that feedback is how you grow, and they should be hungry for it. And we hope to help them exercise that skill of really taking feedback and using it for improvement. So, and then we also want to ensure that we have self-driven, self-relevant learning at every stage. We talk a lot about relevance, and the importance there is that, as we know, we are all the main characters in our own story. So things are going to seem more important when they are important to us. So we need to show students why these concepts matter to them, why it's going to impact their career, how it helps them, and that is inherently going to help them encode it more completely because it's important to them and they know how to connect it to self. And finally, we want experiential learning and our work integrated learning to be representative of an authentic work environment, because authenticity just further supports that relevance. When students can, in a simulation like our Simternships, suspend disbelief and really feel immersed in a narrative, they're more likely to persist through what otherwise might feel like tedious tasks. But now they're part of a story. So they're building towards something, and it really helps them learn that resilience through some of the boring stuff we have to do in our work days. So supporting the E3 learning experience is this instructional model. And what I want you to take away from here is that the upper part of this, so that horizontal row, represents the learning events that are part of our engage and encode sections of the learning experience. And those are about knowledge acquisition and then assessment. So that's really what we deliver in our more traditional courseware. Then we have the just-in-time experiential learning, and that's the circular piece below, which represents the enrich phase. And this is where there's a lot, well, in both areas, there's a lot of flexibility. Certainly if someone is only using a Simternship or only engaging in a client project, they can use any source for knowledge acquisition. We, of course, encourage you to use Stukent courseware, but it still works. Same with the other side. If you're using Stukent courseware and you're looking to do an experiential project that's a little closer to what Wahiba's doing and not the virtual model, which the Simternship represents, this allows for that. And what it also does is helps define some of those learning events that are going to best support that knowledge transfer. So these learning events are adapted. They're not exact, but they're adapted from Gagne's 9 events of instruction. And what you'll see here for the encode, or excuse me, the enrich part, is that we always want to connect knowledge. So if you're doing a client project, just make sure that they understand what they're practicing now is the real world execution of what they learned in the classroom. Of course, provide guidance. And it sounds like we have a lot of great resources from Wahiba there. Check knowledge. So this is really scaffolding, making sure as you go, when things start to get more difficult, that everyone is comfortable, that they know what they need to know, they've corrected any misconceptions, and that those are solid before they move forward. We then want them to have the experience, get their hands dirty, see how things work, give them plenty of feedback, as we said. And then I'd loved to see those reflections that you shared, because that's such an important part. And there's so many ways that we can add reflection, not just at the end, but throughout these assignments, to create that relevance we're looking for that drives engagement. So how do they relate the ideas to their own experiences? How do they compare their impressions with their classmates? How might they apply this to a hypothetical or future situation? What drove their decision-making process? How does this impact what they see in their future profession? Has it changed their impression of what they might be doing in the workplace? Are ethical questions coming up? That's a really great one to help that learning be sticky, because if you have to work through complex ethical questions in relation to these skills or concepts that they're practicing, they're going to remember that really well. Anything that has that emotional attachment, they're going to remember really well. So the more we can foster that, the better. I love it. So this is expanding on that. When we have these real stakes, when we're working with clients and we're encountering new obstacles that are the kinds of things you only see in the real world and aren't going to come up in the classroom or in case studies. I guess sometimes case studies do represent interesting problems, but it can never really compete with what they suddenly discover in real life. And it has an emotion connected to it, right? Because they're suddenly accountable for their work. They're working with other people who are impacted by their work. All of this drives emotional connection, which leads to stronger learning. So yeah, when they work with real world clients, they're going to see unique problems, unique personalities, unique ways of collaborating. And all of these are driving those core skills that they're going to need in the workplace. This is our model of competency at Stukent. So a competency in a career context is the combination of knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And those skills are both technical skills and what we call core skills. I don't love the word soft skills because it kind of implies a hierarchy where it's under hard skills, and that's not the case. They are incredibly important and incredibly hard to practice in the classroom. And that's where these more in-depth experiential pieces can really, really make a difference for these learners in terms of developing the core skills they're going to need in the workplace. And the attitudes. That is one where we are dreaming up of a lot of ways to help students acquire attitudinal skills in our Simternships, but it's hard. That really comes from working with people, from reacting to unexpected problems and consequences. And we have a lot of different ways in which we can execute on experiential learning. It's a bit of a spectrum. So certainly at Stukent, we integrate it into our courseware. We have things like our Strengthen Your Skills activities, where they are presented with situations, so they get to transfer their understanding of how to practice skills to a new scenario and get feedback. That is probably the most basic. Then we have something like our Simternships, where they're really replicating a real world environment. They're seeing consequences in an extremely low stakes environment and learning how to deal with those in a safe place. And then we get into things like project-based learning and real client projects. Those are, as I'm sure you can see, challenging to put together. They have administrative constraints. They take a lot of time to set up, but those are better for really teaching students those core skills and the attitudinal skills that we want them to carry into employment, which is where they're going to continue to learn. So I like to consider that as part of experiential learning, because you're never going to have truly mastered a profession until you are in it. So that is absolutely a part of what that is. So for us at Stukent, success is not the graduation cap, but it is being ready to be in that career and to be successful in that career. And I loved one of those testimonials. I think it was Maria who said that when you're working with real clients, that is when you discover all of these new constraints that you might not encounter in the classroom. Certainly case studies will talk about having a budget, but they won't talk about like, oh no, the economy just tanked and the budget we thought we had went away. Those are the kinds of things that they get to work through when working with clients. They get to discover that working with clients isn't as cut and dry as maybe they thought it was through a case study, that they change their minds, that they have their own personalities, and that they are also the star of their own story. So learning how to navigate those situations is amazing. And I think these real client projects or student agencies are just phenomenal ways for students to do that. So we have long-term plans to kind of figure out how we can support you all in executing some of these, but we're not there yet. So right now we really lean toward our innovation partners like Wahiba and some of our authors and more in learning how you guys are doing this and doing it well, and just the value that your students are communicating is so amazing to hear. So as I said, this is such an amazing fit for our instructional model and our learning experience. And we would be excited to hear about any ways that you all are executing that experiential learning part of your curriculum, because there are so many options. But if you want to learn more about the E3 learning experience, we have a lot of research and a white paper. So you can go to stukent.com/E3LX. And at the bottom of that page, you'll see a form that you can fill out to download the white paper. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Connect with Abby if you have ideas or interest in becoming an innovation partner. And we're really excited that you are all excited about experiential learning.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anne Michelle. Like she said, we have a pop-up here at the end of the session that takes you to that E3LX page where you can download the full report talking about this framework and the benefits that classrooms have already seen with our Simternships and such. So we just want to remind you that with this presentation and with Stukent, we want to help you bring real-world experiences into your classroom with free instructor access to our courseware and Simternships. And we hope you got a lot of really exciting ideas that you can implement this semester. So go ahead and click the links below to access those additional resources. And we hope to see you at our next webinar. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and have a wonderful weekend.